it was a year ago that NAPTOSA, the National Professional Teachers Organization of South Africa, urged the Department of Education to address classroom overcrowding, the Western Cape having been impacted by 2,400 teacher posts slashed because it argues it did not receive sufficient budget from the national department. WCED saying it's mitigated against that by hiring an additional 447 teachers. But are we seeing already an impact on classroom sizes? The WCED says that the average learner to teacher ratio is one educator to every 36.7 learners. I think that is already high. I deal with only 2 young people in my household, and that already drives me up the wall. What about a teacher with 36 learners? But there's also plenty of reports, anecdotes of teachers with classroom sizes of 40, 50, sometimes 60. There's a report on IOL saying that there's a Delft school where 96 grade 3 learners are being packed into a media center because the department is still arranging for another teacher. Basil Manuel is the executive director of NAPTOSA. Good morning, Basil. Are your members reporting to you already or how the class sizes are looking in the 2025 academic year?
Good morning, Lester. Yes, we've been getting varied reports, and our method of doing things is we go and check it out first. And yes, we're getting reports of overfull schools, overfull classes, where there are promises teachers are coming, and even that mobile classes will arrive. And this is disconcerting because we are already in the second week of school ending, and this is not what the WCED promised. This is not what they firmly hold out to be true. And speaking with the Western Cape colleagues, and I'm with them at the moment, they are running around checking and the veracity of some of these claims. At the moment, it's all anecdotal, but there are far too many claims suggesting beyond 50, beyond 60, and there are claims of dumping, where certain high schools have been dumped with huge numbers of grade 8s. And we understand there's in-migration, but of course you can't have your base being so large that it causes a bubble throughout the school for the next 5 years. Because normally one grade and the next grade and the following grade are slightly different, but they follow a particular pattern.
The Western Cape Education Department saying only special needs schools have been exempt from teacher cuts. Then there's a current spat between the WCED and an education consultant, Sila Naidu, who posits that it is the majority of quintile 1 to 3 schools, no fee-paying schools, that have been impacted by the 2,400 job cuts. What is the analysis of where we've seen the impacts of more teacher posts being taken away and seeing class sizes reaching the numbers of 40, 50, 60 learners per teacher?
Lester, we saw that report yesterday. We immediately made contact with the WCD, who flatly denied that is true. And there are 2 things that we are looking at. Yes, it is true that a school that is better off would be able to retain a teacher by employing a governing body paid teacher. Now we've got to assess whether that leads to the impression that there were no cuts at the school, or if in fact the report is correct. At this stage, Ridwan is very busy trying to ascertain for us what the true picture is. It is shocking that such a claim could be made, and we don't believe it can just be hot air. So we are checking it out, and we would be very, very unhappy if it was even vaguely or partly true, because whilst we support the notion that your special schools, Alson-type schools, must be protected, because it is very, very difficult to cut there. We cannot believe that there should be an imbalance. If this is applied, it has to be applied evenly. Where there is an oversupply, it must happen. But the additional 470 posts that have come is not it's not a new gift that has fallen into the laps of schools. This is planned for. This is part of the basket for in-migration, so that one can mitigate against the full impact. That's not a bad thing. However, we also want to see that those posts are distributed properly to where the needs really are. We cannot agree that the numbers are at 1:37. That's not true. That may be the system's ratio, but that is not the class size.
Your focus is, of course, on the labor conditions of teachers and their well-being. We'll talk to someone else about the impact on learners, but what's the impact on teachers if already second week of a new academic year, they're being inundated with more learners that they can handle? Let's talk about 6, 7, 8, 10 months down the line. Where does it leave the average teacher who is facing a class size that they're unable to manage?
Lester, we track different things. One of the things we track is how many queries we get from 50-year-olds, 55-year-olds about early retirement. Now, there's a direct correlation between the number of queries of people wanting to get out of the system early, and that's not a good thing. And the correlation is to what they have gone through and what they perceive to be, I can't do it any longer. And so there's been a marked increase in queries. And that worries us, because these are people that still have 10, 15 years service in them, or ought to have. And if they leave early, not only do they disadvantage the system because you're losing people with experience, but they disadvantage themselves because retirement isn't designed for people to be on retirement for the next 30 years. And that is our concern. But the reports from teachers in the class, they're saying we are not coping. And what happens when we are not coping is that the child that needs a little bit more attention, and remember, Lester, that our schools have a mixed basket of children, and that is how it should be. You don't only have bright kids in a class, or you don't only have weak kids, but the weak kids are overlooked and they fall through the cracks because the teacher just doesn't have enough time to pay attention to everybody.
Basil Manuel, Executive Director of NAPTOSA, really appreciate your time.